I've said it before. A good manager is somebody who plugs holes and puts out fires. And when you have time, you shake hands and you kiss babies.
Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Mike Deas-Dawlish, who is the co-owner of Jam Cafe in Vancouver, a young restaurant group that has 3 locations in the city, and it's a really popular brunch spot in Vancouver that is known as much for its long queues out the door as it is for its popular brunch offering. If you haven't already done so, click the subscribe button to get brand new content directly to your feed every single week. Mike, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So you have a restaurant, a couple of restaurants in Vancouver, and there's got to be the longest queue of any cafe in Vancouver. Always seems to be outside your place.
It's popular that way. I think our record at the Beatty Street location, which I think was the one you might have been at, was we had 99 people in line at one point, and I've only got 47 seats pre-COVID. So
Wow.
Yeah, people are willing to wait.
Wow. Right. So we before we get into all of that, I always start with all my guests on this podcast, kind of before before Jam Cafe and before all of that. Kind of, could you give us the rundown of your background?
Sure. Been in the restaurant industry now 25 to 30 years, but I'm an avid traveler, and I spent a couple of years traveling around the world. Right out of school, I did that, then went back for a bit of college, then took off and did more traveling. Every time I tried to kind of get out of the restaurant business, I kind of tripped back into it. And I worked for Moxie's in Calgary, where I'm from, years and years ago when it was kind of in its beginning stages. And when I left and I moved to the coast, I started with the kegs. And so I'm a big steak guy, enjoyed the keg restaurants. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sequoia Group. That's Carderos and the Sandbar and the Tea House and Seasons. So they're kind of iconic restaurants. And I worked for them for 10 years and worked running Sandbar and Carderos, and then did the Japanese company Aburi restaurants. And that's where I traveled a ton and built all the restaurants, and kind of went from 35 staff to 400 staff in about 3 years, and took our sales up over the $20 million mark, and then decided it was time to join Jim with the Jam Cafe, because we had originally spoken about opening Jam in Victoria, and then I left to go and do the Japanese company, and he continued on with it. But in the back of our minds, we were always going to get together and do another one in Vancouver. The success of it just caused us to do the second in the Kitsilano area.
Wow. And just before we get into all that, what was your role within the Japanese company you worked for?
I was in charge. There was the owner from Japan. He moved his family here, and there was a language barrier. So I was considered basically the COO. So I basically looked after all the restaurants, and we started with 1. And when I left, there was 4, and I was thinking about doing the 5th one. So basically I did the construction, the hiring. We did a lot of the infrastructure, moving people around the country and that kind of stuff. But I basically ran it with the owner.
Oh, that's
I was considered director of operations.
Yeah, very good. And then, as you said, you decided to join Jim with the Jam Cafe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose what was it kind of that, because at that stage you had only 1, right? So what was it that kind of I suppose attracted you to that business?
I think at the end of the day, Jim and I have been friends for years. We met bartending actually at Carderos in 2000 or 2001. Getting to know each other over the years and what have you, we always talked about breakfast. And no matter what we've done or met up with, and I go over to Victoria, we'd always go out for breakfast. So when Jam came around, he showed me the location over there. At the time, I was still in Vancouver and opted to come back. But my thought was always to get back into that. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to start opening restaurants under our mantle or our brand. And they did a great job in creating the brand. creating the excitement. And when we got it over to Vancouver, there was a bit of a name for it already, and then it exploded when we got into Vancouver. But Jim and Candy had done a wonderful job over there. So for me, it was kind of just a natural progression of where we went from Beatty to Kits.
Wow. And opening up in Kitsilano was, because obviously, like we touched on there at the beginning, the queues out the door on the original location are almost famous, right, at this stage.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how did it go then? Like I suppose how did that transition go from taking the concept in one place to Kitsilano?
Well, what's nice is we had a lot of people that were locals, and Beatty is downtown, so we got a lot of the cruise ship and a lot of tourism, as much as locals. Once the line started getting quite long and people waited, we started to lose a bit of the local impact, or the local people coming out, and they were starting to take food with them as opposed to waiting in lines. They lived around it and they saw it. When we opened Kitsilano, we thought it would be a little bit more of a local haunt. It's a great area for that. The tourism is more, I guess it's based a little bit closer to downtown. So Kits is a little bit more of a neighborhood. Sure enough, the lineup started there as well. And we made a slightly larger restaurant. We do get a lot of the people that were at the Beatty coming out to the Kits location. And then the line just started to grow, but we do have more seats here. So we were able to move people in and out. The good thing with that is our kitchen produces food at a pretty good rate. And because of that, I don't like to rush anybody. We don't give time limits. When you wait in line, you can stay as long as you like. But because of that, the food's out, it's quick, and we're able to turn some tables and get people in.
Very good. You look at a lot of restaurants, right? Like a lot of the chain restaurants, and they replicate, and the whole idea is they replicate exactly, right? And I've noticed probably in recent years, and a lot of the kind of, I suppose the kind of more smaller scale restaurants that also scale, right?
Yeah.
They tend to sometimes kind of have slight variations depending on the locality. I just wonder, is that something that was in your mind, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, 100%. Everything we do, if you look at the basic footprint of a jam, we're really brick and beam, and we like to look for that. The one in Kitsilano, we didn't have that option. We actually put brick up on the wall ourselves. But each restaurant has its own identity, and what I mean by that is you see all the knickknacks. We've got the big moose head up. We've got antlers up in the one in Beatty, but each one takes its own identity. So we don't do them exactly the same, but the core is. The menu will stay the same just because people come to expect it. But each restaurant and their chefs have free play of their specials, and they can try that new items out and see how it goes. And a lot of times we'll actually take those new items and put them on the next menu if it's popular and takes off. So I would love to say we have a design plan, but we don't. We start at one end of the wall and we start whatever we've picked up in auctions, in garage sales, online. We just start working on it, and I get a lot of ideas off the net, and by the end of it, we'll look at the wall. If we like it, we like it, and if we don't, we'll take it down. We'll start over again, and that's kind of how we work. Jim and Candy are uber talented when it comes to the design part, and Candy does every sign you see in Jam is hand painted by Candy. So we don't, I've had a lot of people actually ask to buy them, but everything is it's done by us with our own personal touches. But it also allows the locations to have that similar feel, but definitely different characteristics.
Oh, and tell me this. I'd love to get your opinion on this,
Mhm.
Mike, because I, like I said, I'm a big fan of Jam, and I've kind of been looking at it quite closely. And I suppose, like from the outset, like it's not like, so it's an all day brunch style cafe. You're not doing anything, I suppose. Like you're not doing a real like niche product like burgers or pizzas or something, right? You're fairly kind of standard in a way, right?
Yep.
And I'm going somewhere with this question, but
Yeah.
I'd love like I'd love to kind of get your opinion on why is it so successful? Would you be able to pin that down to one thing why it
Definitely.
brought so much success?
Our cooking really takes on a southern flair. We're big with the butter, very unique items. Everything is made in house, or pretty much about 95% of our jams, our gravies, everything we do in house. I think some of the popularity and the excitement that's generated is, and I've said it before, it's consistency. As a restaurant, you have to have consistency. If you don't, people don't know what to expect every time they walk in. We're very particular with what goes on the plates. We're very particular in the look of the venues, and we're all over it. We're always looking to stay current, to improve upon that. But again, when people come down, they have expectations, and we have to meet those expectations or exceed those expectations every time they walk in the door. So for me, the biggest thing with success in these restaurants is consistency and what people have come to expect, and to know that every time they walk through the door, they're going to get that same service, that same food, all of it, the whole package.
Oh, that's great to hear. And how do you, and I suppose now that you have three locations, how do you, I suppose, maintain that consistency? Like operationally, how do you manage the three of them?
Uh, Jim and Candy are on the island. Jim watches that one. I look after these two, but we do have plans for a couple more, which we'll get into a bit later.
Yes.
But for me, I bounce back and forth. We're very hands-on owners, not micromanaging people, but at the same time, we like to be right in the mix. Whether it's in the dish pit, running food, seating tables, bussing tables, whatever, we're there to kind of plug holes. And it gives us a chance to watch the operation. We have a very, very small staff turnover, which is great. People come in, they like the atmosphere, they enjoy the teams we put together, and I think a lot of our success has to do with the people that we have in place, and the consistency and the quality. They take pride in it, and for me not to be here, it was hard for me the first time to step away or even go on vacation when we first opened. But now I have complete trust in the people we have. We really build deep before we start to spread out, and that way we put some roots down. We know that people are with us to stay. They have complete buy-in. They're just a wonderful group of employees across the board. I trust my chefs, trust my GMs and my management, and all the way down to my bussers, the GSs, everybody. They're a good crew, and everybody works together. We actually get a lot of people coming in that comment on the energy in the room, and the service and the attitudes of the staff, and say they like coming in because they just love watching the staff and the interaction of the staff, which to me is a great compliment to them.
Yeah. And can you talk to me a little bit more about that, Mike? Because I think my listeners will be very interested in that, because every guest I get on the podcast, one of the main kind of things that's always said, when it comes to kind of the importance of running a restaurant is staff and people, right?
Yeah,
But also equally to that, I often hear that they're also it's often one of the most challenging parts of a restaurant. So
100%. Yeah.
so I'd love to get your opinion on that. Like, what is it that, like, why, I suppose, why is your company why is that so important to your company, and what are you doing that's maybe different than other places?
I think with us, first of all, in a restaurant setting, a lot of people, it's hard to get a consistent lifestyle or a consistent schedule for
Yeah.
people. For us, pretty much people get set schedules when they come in. They can work their life around that schedule, and the entire front of house, including the back, works as a team. Everybody may have their own section, but everybody is responsible for everybody else's section. And somebody could turn around, somebody could be standing at somebody else's table taking an order, clearing plates. What we do is we create that fun atmosphere where they work together. They always feel supported. They know that their hours are secure. They know that we constantly invest and reinvest back into the business. We use great positive feedback, a lot of coaching. And to be honest with you, what I like about it is with our staff is they work so well among themselves. It's almost like they police themselves at time. They take so much pride in the restaurant and what they do, which I love it. And they try to sell the restaurant even when they're not working. But what they do is they really bought into our system, and it's really creating that. It's nice. First of all, they get to work days. They're off in the evenings, which is unusual in this industry period.
Yeah.
But secondly, they take it seriously. They treat it like a profession, and they really get along. We don't build cliques to say anything like that, but what we do is we build a really solid foundation team that they all really do get along. If somebody comes along that doesn't bode or fit in well with the team, it's fairly obvious, and all you have to do is have that work ethic and that attitude. It's like somebody said to me when they left Kits a couple of weeks ago, they couldn't believe how many people actually said goodbye to them on the way out. And I think it was 5 people caught them thanking them on the way out. That's really big for
Oh,
me. And the fact that my staff do it without me having to ask them shows that they like what they're doing. And the feedback I get about our staff is as important to me as it is about the food as well. Just that energy, it's all encompassing. It has to be the full package on that. And when I get compliments on my staff and the energy in the room, I feel just as good as when I get about the food.
Wow, and that's great to hear. And can I ask you, just on a slight aside, Mike?
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, like, are you? Because I'm going to ask you, like, are you still as motivated now in your job as you were? You know, because you've kind of done the startup and then brought it from 4 to, you know, multi-million turnover.
Right.
Like, are you still as motivated now doing a new venture as you always have been? And I suppose personally, what is it about it that makes you so motivated? Like,
There's a challenge, and every time you open a restaurant, it's almost like putting your life on hold for 3 to 6 months.
yeah,
So every time I do it, I question why I do it when we're in the middle of it, but I love it. I love the thought of starting something from scratch and seeing the results when we open the door. It's very, very satisfying. COVID's obviously put a bit of a wrench into some of our plans, but for the most part, we still want to move forward. I think waiting for the last year and now probably part of this year, as we wait to see what the virus does and how some of our restrictions are either lifted or continued, we'll start planning to move forward. And to be honest with you, we're both chomping at the bit. Jim, my partner, and myself we're itching to get something else up and running again. So yeah, you know, the excitement never goes. As I get older, maybe the energy flows not as strong as it used to be, but the passion for this restaurant and this small chain that we have right now, that won't stop. And for us, we want to grow. And I think you'd sent me a question on that as well. We want to grow, but we want to grow correctly. We're not looking to make 50 restaurants and then sell it off and walk
yeah.
away with a golden parachute. That's not. There's a lot of pride in what we do in here, and we enjoy the day-to-day operations of it. So
Right. So
yes,
let's get into that then, Mike.
sure, yeah,
Yeah. You're itching at the bit, you said.
yeah,
So a crazy year we've had, and probably still in the midst of it in many ways. But
very much so.
we're not gonna give COVID any oxygen on this podcast because I'm sick of it. So
Good.
let's talk a little bit about the growth plan. What's the plan
Sure.
for Jam Cafe going forward?
One of our biggest spots that we've been looking almost 2 years now is North Vancouver. I mean, basically, it's its own city. We have a lot of people that drive over the 2 bridges to come and see us. We've told them for years that we will be opening. It's unfortunate that we haven't had the right spot come up in North Vancouver, but we do feel that with everything that's happened in the last year, there are some opportunities. We are also looking at a possible another location in Victoria, in an area that we wanted to get into for many, many years, and something has recently come up that actually surprised us. So that could be in the cards a little sooner than later. So it would be one over there, definitely North Vancouver. I'm originally from Calgary, and I promised family and friends that we will do one in Calgary. It's only an hour flight from here, but again, a lot of it will depend on our infrastructure, and we're going to make sure that we're building our infrastructure. So when we open something that's not in the same city, it kind of changes all your demographics, and it kind of changes how you're going to have to run it, because at arm's length, it still has to be. So we've got people who have been with us for 5 years, 6 years, and chances are they'll move out there and help us open. So we know that we've got the right eyes and ears. But I would say within the next 3 to 4 years, we'd like to have another 3 to 4 open. So
Excellent.
bring us up to about 6 or 7.
Excellent. And I'd love to, if you will, Mike, I'd love to get into the micro on that, especially
Sure.
with your background, with so much experience of opening new locations. What's the what's the, I suppose, and you touched on it there. What's the criteria when it comes to saying, look, let's open up a new place? What's the kind of criteria you look at?
First of all, the venue. Two main things. What we're finding right now is because of city permitting and what have you. In Vancouver alone, if you're doing a raw build, meaning that you may have it licensed for that area as a restaurant or zoned, but it's a raw build. When you're building from scratch, it's incredibly expensive. And a lot of times the builders will give you a thing called TI, which is an tenant improvement allowance. So basically, they're going to help you invest in their building. The problem with it is the permitting. In Vancouver alone, I could put a permit to build and just build the inside of the restaurant. It can take a year before they'll actually get back to me. So a lot of people sign these leases and can't even get started. So what we've done now is we start looking, I've done raw builds before, much more difficult. We're looking for existing restaurants. And what that means is we can bypass that. We can transfer licenses over. We can still kind of gut the inside, but the walls are up. And so we're not doing any major permitting, electrical work and what have you. We're doing more of a cosmetic change. So that's one of the criteria. It's the look of the building too. We're always looking for about 18, 19, up to about 2,500 square feet. It kind of fits our model. We're looking anywhere from about 40 to 65 seats max. And it has to be the area. It's got to be a demographic that is local, has a tourist impact, and has some businesses around it as well. But it has to be somewhat quaint. We're not looking for the big stops. Like, I don't want 100 seats. I don't want 150 seats. Jam works because of the environment that we build in there. And that's one of the reasons that we are so slow in opening. Just to find Kitsilano took me 2 years. And it was an existing restaurant, because we've had opportunity, but if we don't feel it's right for Jam, we won't take it. We won't do it just for the sake of opening a Jam. It has to fit our equations. And that includes the costs, the leasing costs, the whole bit. But overall, the look of the building and the area that it's in is critical.
Excellent. And again, going very micro on this, because a lot of my listeners are restaurant owners, so I think they might find this interesting. But and maybe a bit of a silly question, but how exactly, when it comes to looking for a place, a new location, like, what's your process there? Like, are you talking with auctioneers? Do you have some kind of deal going on when something comes up, or how do you work that?
I work with a number of brokers. So a lot of times that we'll get word of a restaurant either closing down or being sold, and either call the landlords or the owners ourselves. We'll drive into a neighborhood and see if something might have closed down and see what the building looks like. But I also work with business brokers, and these business brokers will have their finger on the pulse. A lot of times they're the ones who are doing the listing. They'll know if somebody's moved out. They deal directly with landlords, with larger buildings and larger companies that may have these spots. So really, I use 2, 3, 4 different fields. It's very difficult. In the past, when something came up, everybody would try and jump on it. I think the small restaurant model became much more popular. Even though we've got the big cactus clubs and all kinds of stuff, there's still that kind of that mom and pop shop that people really crave. And so when a 2,000 square foot building comes up that is outfitted for a restaurant, popular, people race in, they try to snap it up. The nice thing is the landlord is always looking for somebody who's going to be there. They say 1 in 10 restaurants lasts 2 years. It's not an easy business to get into. So landlords don't want to keep turning a restaurant over. Jam has a nice reputation now. We're always update. We're self-funded. We're debt-free. Everything that we do, Jim and I do personally. We don't have any investors, and our history is something that landlords look for, in the sense that we're in place for 5, 10, 15 years. That's what they're looking for, is stability.
Excellent. No, that's really interesting. You said a while back, you said that you're not looking for, build them up to 100 restaurants and then just get an exit. So I suppose COVID has changed quite a lot, right? But I'd love to get your opinion on kind of go back to kind of pre-COVID and your kind of growth plan, and then now, like, has it changed a lot since COVID?
Hasn't changed a ton, to be honest with you. I think what it did is COVID put it on hold. But to be honest with you, I think as we start to get towards the end of COVID, or we see some kind of results of the vaccines and people displaying a little bit more confidence in terms of dining out and coming out, I actually think our growth pattern will increase faster than if COVID had never happened. Right. And again, in a good sense, that there are opportunities out there. In a sad sense, that there's a lot of venues that aren't going to make it. And so places, and with licensing, a lot of times in places like Vancouver, other cities, they will only give so many restaurant zoning areas out. So you might not have an opportunity unless somebody sells. You might not have an opportunity to build because you can't get the zoning for a hospitality or restaurant or whatever designation it may be. With COVID now, there were a lot of people that were teetering on the edge, and COVID and with subsidies has helped them. But the longevity of these businesses, I think, were always in question. So I know that landlords, before, we were paying through the nose and everything was going up at such a high rate. I think with COVID, it's actually brought things down in terms of cost wise, where landlords are going to be a little bit more appreciative of businesses
Yes,
coming in
yeah.
that have sustainability and can land. So I think it's kind of flipped. And I think where we've been held off for a year and a half, I think exponentially we're going to speed up in the next 2 to 3 years on what we want to do.
Excellent. No, I agree a lot of your sentiments there. There's definitely more opportunity there. And
Nice.
I suppose another point there is you said you're not looking for a 100-seater restaurant. Jam Cafe's model is 40, 50 odd seats.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been in Jam Cafe in your original one, and it's that model, the kind of brunch model, sit down, high turnover tables,
Yeah.
quite comfortable and cozy. And back in the day when I was there, it was packed full of people, which was great. But like with COVID now, even have you had to change the model at all, or do you still think you can carry on with that?
I think we still carry on with it. The model obviously changed a little bit with putting up some plexiglass, some barriers.
Yes,
Our
yes.
capacity levels came down. Right now, there's a restriction in place that people are really only supposed to go out with their own household, which keeps
Okay.
group size. We only really do about groups of 6, and that's what they were trying to say. Nobody greater than group of 6. Now you're supposed to have it within your household. Very hard for restaurants to judge
Yeah.
who is and who isn't as they come in. But at the same time, what we're finding is with less capacity, less tourism, what have you, we're seeing a lot of locals, but at the same time, as they come in, what would take the kitchen 10 to 15 minutes, we have, we want everything out by 15 minutes. I think that's good. Right now, it's 7 to 9 minutes. So the food is being produced at a faster rate. You're still getting the fresh product, but it's coming up a little bit quicker. So yeah, it's changed a little bit. I mean, everybody's sales are down. We can't obviously do what we did with the capacity, but moving forward, the excitement of a busy brunch place and the lineup, it generates those questions and that excitement. Somebody drives by and sees our lineup and says, "Whoa, what is that?" And people don't. Well, Evan, even yourself, you go to a restaurant and there's one next to it and it's full, and there's one that's wide open with 2 tables in it. It's that atmosphere it creates. So I know that when we're busy and people see the line, it's a place they want to be. So it's all
Yeah.
kind of part of the persona. And no, we're going to continue. We are definitely going to adjust for whatever happens in the next year as we've adjusted to get reopened. But we're pretty tight on our business model as it is, and we just tweak it where we need to.
Excellent. And a bit of a strange question here for you, maybe a bit, again, a bit businessy. But you mentioned about having 2 locations in Victoria, and you have 3 locations in Vancouver now. I wonder, like, is that something that you look at? Like, is there a kind of a limit to the amount of locations you could have in one city like Vancouver?
Yes, 100%. One of the reasons that so we've got one downtown, we've got one in Kitsilano. Next one definitely would be North Vancouver. That's pretty much it for Vancouver for us. We
Okay.
may look at something in the Langley area. The biggest thing we don't want to be is I don't want to jam on every corner. I don't
Yeah.
want people thinking, hey, there's one here, there's one down the street. We still want to be that special spot that people want to go to.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't want a myriad, and I want each one they go to. I want them to see something different in that location. So for us, not interested in the corporate feel of a 50 to 100 person restaurant or chain. We're quite happy doing 6, 7, 8 restaurants where we can really have our hands on it and work with the people that are in there. So yeah, we definitely want to expand, but we're careful, really, really
Excellent.
careful.
Excellent. And I really appreciate your time, Mike. But let's finish up with two last ones.
Sure.
The I suppose the one thing that I'm always looking at personally is concepts, and I'm always looking at what's the next big concept. So I'd love to, if you will, ask you that. I suppose what do you think? Is there any concept out there that you like, or even is there any concept, I suppose, that you saw and you said, I wish I had done that one?
You know what we did? Jim and I spent some time in Chicago and New York. We went for 4 days each a few years back, and they have the largest restaurant show in the world is in Chicago. And we did see we'd like to take a little bit more retail And what I mean is a little bit more jam swag, and do an area that we do a little bit more of the house baking. We do our hot sauce, the jam and what have you. And we saw some trends down there where they had wonderful restaurants and an incredible kind of bakery area on one side. And so we're thinking of evolving a little bit into that if we have the space and the size to do it. I also think that eggs are popular. I mean, right now the trend is breakfast, and I think with what's happened in the world, people are more confident going out during the day. So for us, when the economy is great, it's good for us. When the economy is not so great, we're still kind of forefront in that, where instead of going out for dinner with the kids and having wine, beer, they can come out for a nice brunch. A little bit better. They're not spending as much money. It's during the day. They're at home at night. So I think eggs and breakfast, in terms of what's becoming hot, is hot. If you walk around now, there's a lot of sandwich boards outside of restaurants saying offering breakfast. We're offering breakfast. They're all trying to get that breakfast business in. I'll give you one little stat. At just the 2 restaurants in Vancouver pre-COVID, in 1 year, we did, I think it was 590,000 eggs in 1 year between the 2 restaurants. So with our batters and what have you. So eggs are really, really popular. We get them from Island Farms on Vancouver Island, and we keep them running, I'll tell you.
Fantastic. I love that. And I agree with you on those 2 concepts. I've definitely seen that even in Ireland, the changing in retail, and also eggs, for sure. I love that. Very high margin as well, right? Eggs, which is always good.
Very high margin. It's really nice because with everything else, produce, vegetables, fruit, the whole bit, like everything grouped in, meats, everything's going up, and it's only going to keep going up. Eggs seem to stay a little bit more constant. So for us, we don't want to jack up our prices. People, they're coming out of this, they don't have a ton of money to spend, so we're trying to stay as much as we can on same par. So yes, eggs they're a wonderful thing to actually have.
Excellent. And I'll finish up with this, Mike.
Sure.
You mentioned that both yourself and your business partners you don't micromanage, but you're hands-on, right? And you're always in the stores, and you're always helping out where it's needed. I'd love to get, and especially from your point of view, from someone that has, like I said, ran a big group. As you scale and as you grow, how does that change? Like does your your corp, like, do you begin to have more departments and stuff? Could you talk to me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. That's all part of the development of our infrastructure. I've said it before. A good manager is somebody who plugs holes and puts out fires. And when you have time, you shake hands and you kiss babies. And that's how a restaurant manager kind of needs to work. And that's how an owner does it as well. And with us, creating the infrastructure is what we're doing. And we've got a lot, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 wonderful people that are looking to stay with our company and grow. They know our core values. They know what we do. So what we do now is, for the instructors, we're going to start building them up. I look after it on an area perception right now. So I'm going to train somebody, one of my GMs, one of my chefs, to take over that role. So they'll step into, as I'm opening another restaurant, they'll take my role. They know exactly what we expect. They'll start looking after the restaurants, and then we'll expand their territory as well. So for me, the most important thing about expansion is having the right people in the right places. I would never expand without the people there. I wouldn't even try and open. I've seen it happen too many times. It's always a massive failure. And I think realistically, it's all about the people you put in place. So getting a small HR department, getting a front of house area manager, and getting a back of house area chef, who we just got on just before COVID. So he's been working in the restaurants right now. He's going to be a big part of opening. So for me, we won't be able to touch as much as we could in the past, but the people that we're training will have the exact same site, the exact same mindset as we have.
Excellent. And just a quick one for you.
Sure.
A kind of a model that a lot of the restaurants that are at scale and the chain restaurants use would be like a central production unit. Where they produce all their kind of products basically, and then ship them out. It strikes me that might, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. That model might not fit for Jam, or would it?
It depends. Basically, that's called a commissary kitchen, and a lot of these guys do it. They either have a commissary kitchen within one of their restaurant chains in a separate area, or a completely separate entity, separate building, separate suite, where they'll do that. I don't know if we'll have a commissary kitchen, but eventually we do want to have, say if we went into North Vancouver, we would look for a slightly larger kitchen in that sense, where we could do a little bit of maybe all of our hot sauce and jam production
Yes,
out of one
okay.
location. And then they would requisition each restaurant and say, okay, Mike, I'm down to my last box of hot sauce. Can you, I'll place an order and then we'll drive it over and drop it off. So yeah, absolutely. There are certain things that we can do, not our fresh baked goods, but our jams, our hot sauces, anything like that, we'd love to do at a central location. It's a little bit more challenging all of a sudden when you've got a Calgary location or a Kelowna location.
Yes.
That's a little bit farther away. But because of what we've done so far, we know that we can also produce in-house. But the restaurants are a little closer together, we could do a central for sure. And to me, it's invaluable to have that. You can also do menu development, you can do menu structure, menu costing, you can do taste trials, everything at a commissary kitchen. So I like them for sure.
Excellent. It's absolutely fascinating chatting to you, Mike. And honestly, thanks so much for the time. And I can't wait to get over to Vancouver, hopefully this summer, but if not, definitely next year. And I'm looking forward to trying out jam again. So thanks a million.
Well, thanks, Evan. It was a pleasure being on the show. And yeah, when you're out here, please let me know. I'd love to make your
100%.
acquaintance and have you down in one of the restaurants, hopefully at one of our new locations.
Yes, for sure. Nice one. Thanks a million, Mike. Thanks for watching the Business of Restaurants podcast with me, Evan O'Cally. For new episodes every single week, subscribe below.